Right. Well, thank you for coming. It's a real pleasure to be here. Right. I hope no one, A, names these unicorns, or B, is scared of balloons popping.
No.
Okay, good. Because today I want to burst some motivational myths. The whole problem with motivation, as you will probably have experienced, is that we go to a talk, we read a self-help book, we listen to amazing people, then we go, yes, I'm totally fired up and now I'm going to do it. And then about an hour after the talk, that ebbs a little bit, and then the next day we're just back to where we were before and nothing actually has changed. And what happens is, after the motivational talk or you've read that motivational self-help book, you get a dopamine hit. Simply because you completed the book or you completed the talk. And the more motivating the talk, the bigger the hit. And what that tends to make us do is just find another talk or find another book. And you end up just consuming more and more talks, self-help, reading, all of that, which is great, but we have to take action. And so that's why I wanted to burst some motivational myths which stand in the way of taking action. So, let us start with my first one. My first one I love because actually I can make people lie immediately. I can make most people lie. I just need to ask you one simple question. How are you? Ah, good for you, good for you. What is the immediate thing most people say? I'm fine. I'm fine. Good. First myth to burst. We're not fine. And it's okay not to be fine. Not only is it okay to be not good, but it's also okay to be amazing and brilliant and really over the top happy. That's great too. But if we're simply saying, I'm fine, we're often lying to ourselves as much as anything else. What we mean by I'm fine is, I'm not okay, but I don't want to talk about it now, so I'm just fine and move along. That's okay, as long as you don't lie to yourself. And so sometimes it's why a lot of the mental health first aiders are taught, ask twice. So you ask someone, how are you? And they say, I'm fine. And if you're a bit concerned about them, you ask again and you say, now, are you really fine? And the second time round, chances are they will probably get somewhere closer to the truth. And it's just important that we recognise this. But I'm fine, everything's fine, it'll be fine, is really one of the lies we tell ourselves. So credit to you for saying not good.
I bet you didn't say I was going to lie.
Yeah. But that's it. As long as you don't lie to yourself, that's the main thing. As long as you don't lie to yourself, that's the main thing. So be aware of I'm fine. That's an easy one. That's an easy one just to remember. The second one, I'd like you to think about whether you use these phrases. Have you ever done something really embarrassing and then you've gone, gosh, that was so awful, I will never do that again. I will never do that, or that was bad behaviour, or that was wrong, or have you ever been in that situation? Do you mind sharing what happened? Or
previously drinking too much alcohol.
Yeah. Never do that again. It was never going to happen. Again, good, bad, right or wrong. What a lot of people think, if something is good or right, I must keep on doing that. Or if something is bad or wrong, I must stop doing that. Now, since I'm never drinking alcohol again, have you come back to drinking a little bit of alcohol again? This is the point. What we're better off reframing good or bad to is something effective or ineffective based on the outcome. So if we actually think about what we're trying to achieve and then look at, well, is what I'm doing going to help me get towards that or not, we are going to find a better way of approaching life and a better way of kind of thinking about our next course of action. And if we focus on the outcome, what you'll tend to find is you take out a lot of emotion. Because have you ever been in a situation where you've been having the same argument again and again and again with somebody for whatever reason? It gets to a stage where you just want to win. You just want to be right. You just want to show them that they were wrong. That's that. And actually, the arguments become less and less effective. But if you take a moment to step back and ask yourself, hang on, what am I actually trying to achieve? You might be able to find a better way. And this is a technique used in dialectic behaviour therapy. It's used for managing emotions. It's called the STOP technique. And the STOP acronym, very simple. The S stands for stop. If you find yourself getting into an always or never situation, or a good or bad, or right or wrong, or the same argument again and again and again, just stop. That's the first bit. T stands for take a step back. That might be actually physically. That might be go out for a walk. It might be get out of that environment just for a moment. Tell the person you're coming back to it. Otherwise they get worried and that causes all kinds of other issues. But take a step back. The O is the most important, and that is think about what outcome you're trying to achieve. What actually am I trying to do here? So I had a student once who was explaining that once she had a real back and forth with a supervisor, and it just, nothing was getting resolved. And so I said, okay, well, what outcome were you trying to achieve? And she said, I just wanted them to check my literature review. So why are you getting into an argument about it? Because somehow she lost track of what the outcome was she was trying to achieve, and it was all about but you never listen to me, but I do listen, and then it got into something completely different. So look at the outcome, but when you look at the outcome, also with the O, think about what other options you can take, and try something different. Because the one thing I will guarantee you is, whilst I can't promise if you do something different, it will all work out, what I can guarantee is if you do the same thing, you're just going to go back in that loop. So stop, take a step back, think about your outcome and your options, but then once you've got that, proceed. And proceed in a different way than you did before. But when you have the outcome in mind, it becomes a lot easier. And with the good, bad, also use that as a trigger. Oh, I'm thinking in all or nevers, what's going on here? But reframe it to, is this behaviour going to be effective or ineffective based on what I'm trying to achieve? And that may help moving forward with whatever it is you want to do. The next one. Have you ever used this phrase? I will be happy when I get that job. I will be happy when I am in that relationship. I will be happy when I've lost weight, or whatever it is. Have you ever been there? Okay. Right, no. No. Oh, my husband jokes about these. He says, is that how you motivate people? You shout at them. Yes, that is. But happiness, oh, my thing's gone off. Happiness is a state, not a goal. And in terms of it being a state, not a goal, is that we can choose to be happy at any time. If we are simply saying that I will only be happy when X happens or Y happens or when whatever happens, then we have a problem. Because what we're actually doing is we're putting off happiness. And research has even shown that we can trick our brains into the happiness state. And what they did was, which I think is really funny, psychology research has moved on so far since I was studying psychology at A-level. But what they did was they got students to put a pencil in their mouth, like that, horizontally, and it made them smile. And those students who had to do that reported feeling so much happier than the students who didn't do that at all, or had to hold it like that. And this is the beauty about our brain. Our brain is wonderful, it's complex, it does so many things, but its biggest job is it's there to make us survive, it's there for our survival, it's there for us to actually get through and get away from lions in the jungle and so on. Our brain has not evolved as fast as our technology, and this is the issue. We actually have to teach our brains to be happy. We have to almost short-circuit it and be able to look for positive things and remind it that we're not only about survival, but we can thrive. So I have written books on resilience, and one of the biggest myths of resilience is, well, see if you can tell me, when we say the word resilience, what's the phrase that often comes out of that when we talk about resilience? It's usually about bouncing back. Bouncing back. Now, the problem with bouncing back is, let's take the pandemic as an example. Do we actually want to go back to where we were before? Well, probably not, because the world has changed anyway. What we really want to do is spring forward. And that's what resilience research is now beginning to see. It's not simply about bouncing back, it's springing forward. And a model that I used when I was writing about it, it's a 3-stage model. And the first bit of that is surviving. Yes, of course, we all have to get through the adversity that we're facing. The next stage, however, is rebuilding. And then it's thriving. And the thriving is the most important, because that's what positive psychology has given us. Positive psychology came about in the 80s, when psychology used to only be focused on moving somebody from not okay to okay. And that's where clinical psychology has its roots. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's wonderful. But Martin Seligman, who studied depression, said, well, this is half-baked. This is not the full story. I want to be interested in happiness. I want to see what makes people feel good. I want to see what makes people thrive. And so from doing, you'll have heard of him with learned helplessness. He's the one who talks about that. He moved from there and is known as the founder or father of positive psychology, focusing on how we actually go from okay to thriving. And that's what also comes through resilience. What resilience does, in some pieces of research, it will say, the adversity that we go through when we have to survive and we have to make those changes actually puts us in a better position to thrive than plain sailing would have. Because if we'd never been tested, if we'd never had to struggle and we'd never had to have a go at something or try and make a different path or do something differently, we'd never know that we could. And we may not have had the network that we reached out to. We may not have had the extra skills that we had to learn. And because of that, that network and those skills put us in a better position to go further. And so the third part of resilience is going from rebuild to thriving. So that's why I say resilience is about springing forward. And so coming back to happiness being a state, not a goal, positive psychology will also suggest that this sort of growth and climb is a lot easier in a state of positive affect. And positive affect is a state of overall well-being. It is not positive effect or positive emotion. Positive emotions are triggered by someone saying, oh, you look pretty today, or by a nice present, or by a good meal. They're temporary, they're fleeting. But if you build up a series of positive emotions enough, you end up creating a sort of a bigger state of positive affect. You feel better. You generally feel better, which means that what you've done is you've broadened that window of tolerance, that window of coping, because you just feel a lot happier. And as I say, we can choose happiness. It is a state. It isn't something that we have to reach or aim for. First of all, we can trick ourselves by putting the pencil in our mouth, but alternatively, we can do things that build up positive affect. And those things include going out for a walk in nature. It includes surrounding yourself with positive people. It includes creating some boundaries for yourself and not spending time with toxic people. So here comes my next question. How many of you have toxic relationships or emotional vampire type relationships with some people? You did, good. You don't anymore. That is a good thing. That is a good thing. One of the biggest drains of happiness and positive affect is negativity, and people being negative or people draining your energy. And so I want you to do another little exercise with me. It's just a very simple gratitude stretch. I just want you to stretch your arms out right now. I know you've been sitting for a while. And think of one thing you are grateful for in your life. It might be a car, a house, a pet, whatever it might be. Okay, stretch your legs out and think of one person you are grateful for in your life. Anyone at all. And now give yourself a bit of a shake and think about one thing that you really enjoyed today, whatever that might be. Okay. Now, first of all, as I said, short-circuiting the brain, tricking the brain, gratitude primes our brains to look more positively. So the more we practice gratitude, the more the neuroplasticity works in our favour and we start looking for more positive things. It's a little bit like the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think something bad's going to happen, you're going to look for it to happen. Same thing, if you think something positive, you're more likely to notice the positive. It's a simple little short-circuit trick. But that exercise, if you do this, say, every day for the next 7 days, and you are psychologists, you are empiricists, you know how the scientific method works, you will notice that some people and some things turn up all the time. You are always grateful for that particular thing. You are always grateful for that particular person, and you always look forward to certain things. Use that information, find those patterns, and actively choose to spend more time engaged with those people, those things that you yourself have said make you feel good. And that gratitude stretch, the reason I love that exercise is you don't need to get a journal. You don't need to spend night after night writing in it, because people can't do that. It's sometimes too great a habit to get into. But this stretch takes less than 30 seconds. It can be done first thing in the morning or last thing at night. And if you do it every day for 7 days, notice those patterns and then actively go and engage with those things and those people. Because, and this brings me to the start of setting boundaries, it means that when the emotional vampires, the toxic people, come up to you and say, oh, hi, can I spend some time with you? Can you listen to me go on and on about my problems, or whatever they say? Okay. And I get it, because sometimes they're family, so it's harder to get around that. But you can say to them, I'm so sorry, I'm actually really busy, because you've already chosen to spend time doing the things and spending time with the people who've come up in your gratitude stretch. It's a very quick trick to be able to start changing and editing your network to a positive and healthy one. And the other thing it does, if it is family, and if you cannot avoid spending time with the more exhausting people, is by spending time with the energizers, spending time with the people who boost you up, you have more energy for the difficult times. And actually they become a little less hard to deal with. Now, to remain on happiness for just a little while longer, one trick a lot of cognitive psychologists try, they say works, and it's totally up to you if you want to try this, is if you're not feeling great, is to think the positive thoughts and try and think happy things and maybe practice gratitude. I personally think that's too far a jump. I think if you're in that place and it's very difficult to see something happy, I think forcing yourself to try and do it feels a bit false, and you get into that almost smiling depression, like the I'm fine lie, and that's not helpful either. So what I suggest you do is, sticking with what Martin Seligman said, there are a number of other emotions that can help us create a state of positive affect, but they don't have to be happiness. So try curiosity instead. Try asking, well, what could happen if I go tonight, rather than I'm dreading going tonight? Well, what could happen if I go? Or who might I meet? Or, well, if I just go and see how it is, let's then take it from there. Curiosity is a really nice trait that isn't necessarily too far a leap from negativity to handle. So introduce a little bit of curiosity. Similarly, you can try to introduce gratitude, and this one I find works. It might be a bit of a big leap depending on what's making you sad, but if I mean, I love-hate relationship with social media, but I look on LinkedIn sometimes and I get that, ooh, why did they get a promotion? Ooh, why did they get an award? Ooh, and then I start worrying, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. And gratitude, I find, helps, because if I can use that and turn it into, well, I'm glad that I saw their happiness and now I can focus on what makes me happy. It's that little reframing that might make that difference to just get you out of that particular space. And that's why I come back to happiness is a state, and happiness can be chosen. but you don't need to go from sadness to happiness because there are many steps in the middle. You can look up the emotion wheel. It's a really nice wheel where it gives you a lot of different choices of emotions. To digress a little bit with the emotion wheel, what I find as a coach is certainly when it comes to understanding negative feelings, people are very quick to talk about anger or frustration or sadness sometimes. But actually those are top lines only. And when you look a little bit deeper into it, anger might be because they felt rejected, or they felt let down, or they felt unheard. And sadness might be feeling lonely, or feeling unwanted, or feeling guilty even. And so what this emotion wheel, it gives you some key top line emotions, and then it flowers out into all the other things that you could be feeling. So using it for happiness as well. If you don't feel like going from I'm not happy to I'm happy, then consider the spectrum of other things that you can feel instead. And gratitude, curiosity, those are some of them. We don't have to jump straight from one to the other. Which it's just a nice thing I quite like, that I hadn't really thought about until I started studying emotions, really. Okay, the next one. Have you ever said to yourself, well actually no, I'll reframe this. How much time do you spend on self-care? Enough? Not enough? Not enough, okay. Why?
Just say everything else. You've got to do everything else first.
Yeah.
And then when you come to living it, you do it all the time.
You're knackered.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Have you ever heard people sort of say, well, self-care is selfish? That's, I'll come back to the exhaustion, but that's the myth that I wanted to bust in the first place. But it's good if you haven't heard it, because a lot of people do think, well, I can't look after myself because I need to be looking after everybody else.
Yeah, but I think it's
That. It is that, isn't it? Yes. Self-care is self-ish in that we have to think about ourselves. Now, the reason for this is I'd like to, well, actually, can I borrow you both? One of you can hold the cup, and the other, careful, it's drawing pins, but there's a reason for it being drawing pins. Let's imagine you are the cup. It is, isn't it? Okay. So imagine you're the cup. Now, for everything that you've ended up doing, containing anxieties for other people, this is, I'd like to put just a handful of pins in. So let's just think about, have you ever gone to a restaurant, it's been really bad, and you left a tip? You've still left a tip? Yeah. A few of us have done that, haven't we? Have you ever stayed back to help somebody else finish work, even though it's not your work to finish? A few of those, yeah, absolutely. One of my favourites, have you ever had a really bad haircut and gone, yeah, that's lovely? Too often. Been there, done that one. Have you found yourself doing a lot of things for other people and you've come to ask them a favour and they've not quite returned that favour? Yeah. Are you a bit of a people pleaser? You just hate saying no to people because, you feel bad. You feel it's a work in progress. It's a work in, that's okay. Work in progress is all good. All right. Have you ever loaned someone money or shared your lunch or whatever when that's all you've got? That's all you've got. Okay, good. What else have we done? Have you found that if all the running around you did for other people was actually on a treadmill, you'd probably be really fit and able to run a marathon by now? Good. So yeah, the reason why these are pins is because these are quite painful. These are quite painful to put in. And what will happen is every time you contain more and more of other people's anxieties, you are filling up this cup. And what will happen, as you can imagine, is it will get to a point where you won't be able to function as a cup anymore. If I put any more in, those pins are going to go all over the floor. Self-care does something a little bit special. Now, I don't know whether you've seen these before, but what self-care does is it creates a bit more headspace for you. And that means that you have that little bit more room for yourself and for other people as well. And that's just to give you one each to remind you of why we need to have self-care. Thank you for that little demo there. That's one thing. But let's talk about how we can get a bit more self-care into our lives. I like to use the SPICES acronym, and this was given to me by a coaching friend of mine, Sharon Norton. Now, there are 6, SPICES is 6 different types of self-care. And the reason I like it is because so many times when we talk about self-care, we immediately think of yoga and meditation and spa days and maybe getting our nails done and that sort of thing. Formal stuff, takes time to plan, and we are probably often too exhausted to want to do it. No one wants to run a bubble bath at 11 o'clock at night when you've come home after having run around for other people all day. It's not going to happen. But also, a second question I'd like to ask you is, are you the type of people who, after you've done a project and you finished it and everyone goes, oh, well done for doing that, you can relax now. How does that make you feel? Do you go, yeah, I really want to relax? Or, no, don't actually want to relax. That's not how I feel. Yeah. I think, you see, this is why SPICES was such a revelation to me. There are 2 ways of performing self-care. One is relaxing, and that helps. The other's re-energizing. That helps even more, as far as I'm concerned. For me, I'm that type of person. When I finished a project and I'm tired, I don't actually want to relax. I don't want a bubble bath. I don't want to go for a massage. I actually want something that stimulates my brain, or I want to learn something new. It doesn't mean I want to organize it and run it, but it means I want to experience something that engages me. And so it's nice to remember that there's relaxing and there's re-energizing. So SPICES, the first S stands for spiritual. Now that is relaxing. So self-care can be spiritual. Now this can be reconnecting with religion, it can be reconnecting with the universe, it can be reconnecting with yourself. That's all great. Meditation, affirmations, going out for walks, any of those things, really good for spiritual self-care. And we tend to need both, but we have a preference for one over the other. P stands for physical. And physical can be going out for your run or going out and doing a dance class or something like that. But it can also be as simple as putting on some music that you like and just jumping around your room for a bit. Anything like that. It can even be physical intimacy, as long as it's safe and consensual. So, but it can be any of those things. So again, don't sort of think, oh, self-care, it needs to be your bubble baths and your spa days. It doesn't. However, is my favourite of all of these, and we don't often think about this. That's intellectual self-care. Reading a book, attending that talk, reflecting on your own questions that you might have, why did I think that, or how come that happened, those sorts of reflection prompt exercises that you might do at talks. So intellectual is really nice. It's different, and a lot of us forget that. So learning a new skill, it might be learning during the pandemic, everyone made banana bread. That was a big skill that everyone learned, or they learned to play the guitar or something like that. But those things are self-care as well. It's investing in yourself. So don't forget intellectual. C is creative self-care. This can be writing poetry, it can be creating music, it can be choreographing dances, but it can also be something as simple as choosing something to wear that expresses who you are, or doing your hair in a certain way, or creating a window box that reflects you with particular choices of flowers, or whatever that might be. And so don't always think creativity is simply stuck at the artists in the world. It's not. It can be anything that helps us express who we are. And we don't have to be really good at it to engage in it. The beauty about creativity is that even if it's bad, it doesn't matter because we did it and it belongs to us. So we actually get that sense of ownership as well. And we can actually flex our creative muscle and build it in the same ways we build physical muscles. So some creative challenges for you, and it's up to you which ones you do, if any, is you might wish to go on a different walk on a commute but take a photograph of something from a different angle. It just gives us a sense of perspective. So maybe it's a grasshopper's eye view of something, or a bird's eye view of something, or the inside of a flower rather than just the flower itself. So take a picture in a different angle. Another one is to draw something like the greater than or less than symbol and make that into something. Just make that into a drawing. Some people draw an arrow, some people draw a fish, but it's practicing creativity. My all-time favourite, it's I call it the best man challenge, and I'll tell you why in a second, but it's to get the word penguin into a speech, especially if it's a work speech. I just managed it right there. But it's really quite funny. Or get a phrase in, or challenge someone to do it. I had a meeting once, and before this meeting, a friend of mine texted me and said, your task for today is to get the phrase, "May the 4th be with you," into this meeting. And it's good fun. So it does depend on who you're doing it for. Don't get yourself fired over it. But it's a really great way to get creative. And the reason I call it the Best Man Speech Challenge is, it's been a number of weddings I've attended, I will often sidle up to the best man and go, "Right, challenge for you. I want you to get this word in." My favourite was telling one best man to say lavatorial, the word lavatorial, and I have to say he did it brilliantly. He said, "Well, I've been told not to make this speech too dirty or lavatorial." I was like, that was good. That was really, really good. So get creative and try and put that in, because that gives us a little bit of a giggle as well. And we forget as adults how important it is to laugh. We really do. As children, we laugh all the time. There is that research you might have heard that as children we laugh something like 300 times a day, but as adults we laugh 17. Those numbers are not correct, by the way. That research has been debunked. But the point is, children do laugh more than adults. And it's because we feel we have so many responsibilities, and we almost, any games we even play, they're all with rules and scoring and targets. Think about it, tennis, squash, badminton, they've all got rules and targets and scores. But I'm talking about playing and having fun for the sake of having fun. And Penguin is a nice little challenge to do that, and you have to get quite creative with it. So that's C. E is emotional. Emotional, that's connecting with one other person. Or it might be connecting with yourself, so it might be journaling. It might be writing things down, it might be speaking to a trusted loved one. And the final S, to me, is one of the most important, and again, it's overlooked, and it's a real re-energizer as well. And this is to give something back to the community, is social well-being. It's not just getting out into the community, it's actually speaking with people and maybe volunteering. And a lot of the work I've done with charities, they say that a lot of people think it's all to do with donations, and it's not. We'd actually love people to just spend their time or maybe give their skills. So if you can do a talk on whichever subject is really important to you, and you can educate people, that's a really great way to donate some time. Other things, it might be even becoming a trustee of that particular charity. There are so many different ways to get involved, and they don't always involve a regular meeting. It can actually be, leukemia researchers doing a Santa run, I'll go and help out for that particular run, and that's it. But it's a really good way to connect with people. And what I find is that it's a good way of changing your perspective about things. Just last week I was volunteering at a party that was being thrown for some of the deprived children in the neighbourhood. And one girl said to me, "I really love football." And without thinking, I just went, "Oh, are you watching the World Cup?" Because you try and communicate, and she just looked at me, "I haven't got anything to watch it on." Oh my gosh, that broke my heart. I thought, that's not my landscape. But it suddenly made me think, there's a whole world out there that I don't think about, and maybe I need to. And actually, just that act of being part of that and hearing that really helped me put a lot of my life into perspective as well. So that's where social well-being can be as important. So your Spices challenge is, for the next 6 days, pick one of those letters. Either spiritual, physical, intellectual, creative, emotional, or social. And give something a go when it comes to your self-care. We're all adults. If you hate doing it, it doesn't matter, you can stop. But a lot of the time, we stick to the self-care methods that we know. We don't consider the other ones. So Spices is a really good way of getting us to try other things. And all of that can build our sense of positive affect and also it can change our state, and we don't need to achieve whatever it is in order to get there. So those are some of the things we can do. And so, one of the last things, because this talk is on motivation, have you ever been told, oh, all you need to do to just get that done is you just need the motivation to do it, you just need to stick at it, you just need to care about it enough, you probably with PhD, you just need to love it enough and it's fine. No, sadly no. There's a really crude equation in psychology, and it is motivation equals efficacy plus value. Motivation equals efficacy plus value. A lot of the time we think that motivation is all to do with the value. How much do I care about this? How much do I really want to do it? And that's not enough. And the reason why it's not enough is I'd like you all to think about maybe who you were 5 years ago. Were your passions, were your drives, your values the same as they are right now? I don't think they will be. I know mine aren't. I think mine changed last week when I met that girl. So passions change and they grow with us and we change, and therefore motivation cannot be passion alone. It has to be something else as well. So for the first check, if you find yourself procrastinating, if you find yourself thinking, oh, I really don't want to do this, you do need to question your value. You do need to question, do I really want to do this? How much is this worth to me now? And if it's no longer important to you, then maybe you do need to find a different pathway. And it doesn't matter if you change paths, because those skills are still transferable. The beauty of psychology is skills are transferable. So don't worry if you're suddenly thinking, oh, I don't like that I put 4 years into it now. Those skills are still going to be helpful. Those skills are still going to be useful. But if you find you've reflected on it and you've gone, well, no, I still want to do this. I still love whatever this is. I still have that passion for it. Why am I procrastinating? It may well be efficacy. Because the biggest lesson to learn, and this is why I try to give practical tools, is it's not always psychological. It is not always psychological. Sometimes it is simply our tools are not good enough. It is sometimes a case of having to blame your tools. It is sometimes saying, well, I'm not getting anywhere because I don't have the right equipment. I don't have the right people helping me. I'm not in the right place to do this. And those are very different changes that you need to make. So that's why this motivation equals efficacy plus value. Value's the easiest to check out. And if something isn't of value anymore, it doesn't matter how easy it is to do, you're probably best off changing paths. But if you still love it, don't give up just yet. Think about what tools you're using and the method it is you're getting there, trying to get there. And it goes back to the stop technique right at the start. Maybe you need to think about different options to achieve whatever outcome it is you're seeking. And so the key thing there is just to remember it's not always psychological. And you will find, especially when you get to my age and when you're talking about training and you're doing all of these sorts of things, people always ask, oh, what's the reason behind that? Why do I do it? Well, it might just simply be you are trying to do it with equipment that doesn't work. People say things like, well, why don't I go out for a run when it's dark? And it's, well, because maybe you need to buy yourself a head torch. It's not a case of psyching yourself up and making yourself feel like going out. Maybe you need a warm running jacket and a light. Practical solutions. So don't always think it's psychological. So finally, when it comes to staying motivated, hopefully you've got some practical tools now to take away with and use, and they create a sense of positive affect, and that positive affect makes it easier to do whatever it is we want to do. But the other thing that we can think about is to think about what our ideal life is going to look like. What do you want that ideal life to look like? And have an idea of what it is. Because every single day we walk a very fine line between the choices that we make and the actions that we take, which might move us to our ideal or away from it. And at the very, very least, all we have to do is make sure whenever we take an active choice, because that's how we stay motivated and that's how we move forward, we are moving towards our ideal and not away from it. So the biggest message is at the end of today, life is a series of choices. It's a series of active choices, it's a series of actions that you can take. If you know what your ideal life is, then always ask yourself before you take that choice, is this going to move me towards it or away from it? That brings me to the end, Jess. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. But I'm happy to take questions, and I will just switch this off now.